Hello and welcome to a new episode of Africa Today. Kenya is bracing for yet more anti-election protest on Monday, despite a warning by the capital police chief that they were prepared to use any lethal force if necessary. The opposition coalition for reforms and democracy, led by the former prime minister, has been carrying out protests in Nairobi and other major cities every Monday for several weeks. Details in the following report. Nairobi's police chief has warned opposition supporters not to take part in Monday's protest in the Kenyan capital if they value their life. The spokesman said police were prepared to use the lethal force if necessary. Despite the warning, demonstrations have gone ahead in Nairobi and the western city, Kisumu. The opposition has been protesting on Monday in recent weeks about the makeup of the Electoral Commission, which it says it's biased. Protests, however, were suspended for 2 weeks after police shot, beat and tear gas demonstrators, and their protesters were killed in a similar rally on May 23rd after protest turned violent. Last month there were complaints of police brutality as officers were pictured assaulting demonstrations in Nairobi. The BBC said the protesters are on the streets of Nairobi and the situation is calm. However, in the Kisumu, demonstrators have blocked a main road with burning tires. At least 3 people died after being shot. Police in western Kenya during similar protests last month. Police said they were acting in self-defense. The opposition Court Alliance wants the current members of the Electoral Commission to resign ahead of next year's presidential elections. Court complaining that they are biased in favor of the governing Jubilee Commission and wants it replaced by the neutral body. Deputy President William Ruto said that Monday's protests were illegal on the basis that the police were not given adequate warning. And the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan expressed his country's support for Kenya in the fight against terrorism. Erdogan, who was on the East Africa tour, has also called on the international community to come to the aid of countries hosting refugees and help them to tackle the issues. Details follow. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan pledged that Turkey was ready to support Kenya and all African countries in their fight against terrorism. Erdogan's remarks came during his tour in East Africa. The Turkish president is an official visit to several countries, including Somalia and Uganda. Erdogan said that Turkey has lost almost 40,000 people in its decades-long fight against the terrorist PKK group. The PKK, listed as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US and the EU, resumed its 30-year armed campaign against the Turkish state in July 2015. Erdogan criticized the usage of the term Islamic terror, stating that terror did not have religion, race or nation. Terrorist groups such as Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab are active in some parts of Africa. Meanwhile, the Turkish president lashed out at wealthy nations of the West over what he calls being indifferent to the plight of refugees. Erdogan had earlier visited Somalia on the last leg of his East African tour, where he opened Turkish-sponsored projects including health facilities and largest Turkish embassy, and provided Somalia with over $400 million in the biggest aid to the country. Welcome back, and we are joined in the studio by Dr. Basin Fahmy, political analyst and a member of Parliament, to shed more light on the episode today on the situation in Kenya. Hello, Dr. Basin, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Now, the opposition has been protesting on Monday on the makeup of the Electoral Commission regarding the coming presidential election. How do you see such protests would have a direct impact on the political life?
As we notice, all of us, that all the citizens in the world, and especially in the third world, of course, are reacting the same way. They want to have a full-fledged democratic system. They won't accept that you could really form commissions or groups, and they feel they're biased. They want to have the freedom to move and express how they think and talk. And if you listen to the reports, you could compare it to reports in many countries. They protested without taking the consent of the police. They are protesting against the system, you see. But what we noticed, and I think that the technology is behind all this, the people are seeing all countries in the world, and they behave the same way. They want democracy, they want a clean system, they want a better life, they want to have the right to protest. Yes, it could cause problems in the country, but if the people, if the responsibles are taking care and understand that the people are not like before, the citizens are not like before, because they can see all over the world what is happening, they can discuss their rights. So this, unfortunately, in some parts of the world, especially the third world, and we were part of it, some people still think that they could manage the situation the same way. What is happening there is exactly what is happening in many other countries surrounding them. So I think it's natural, and the problem always exists that the rulers or the responsible or the politicians responsible for the countries, they don't want to accept the fact that managing their countries should be in a different manner, that the citizens must have their rights, that democracy became a right and a rule of managing all over the world. And again, you cannot fool people. So I think what is happening there is very normal, and it will continue to be unless or until the system there could accept the fact that things have changed. Some people cannot take they can't accept the fact that things are changing, that managing those countries must change like everywhere in the world. And by their attitude, they are causing more problems because, unfortunately, people revolt. And while you revolt, you hurt the economy, you hurt stability, you hurt the tourism, you hurt all your country. So I think what is happening is normal. The rulers must give proper explanation to them, and if there is a problem, they must solve it. If really the commission is biased, it has to be changed. See? But you cannot fool people anymore. This is what I want to come to.
What do you think of the police warning against the opposition? If they take part in the protest, they will use extreme force.
You hear this in many other countries. It's not acceptable anymore. Because when your life becomes very difficult, and especially for the young generations, when they go through protesters, I always say they have nothing to lose. You see what I mean? We don't live properly. What could happen if we go protesting? Either we win or we're still in the same situation. So I don't like that language. People must respect the law. It has to be accepted by everybody. But on the other hand, when we deal with the people, we have to deal according to the law. But threatening left and right, I think this language is not acceptable anymore.
One of the main problems that is facing Kenya and Africa in general is the existence of a Boko Haram militant group there. And they are becoming, unfortunately, powerful every day by attracting more youth, and also they have their own funds. Why Boko Haram is increasing in power?
Because you mentioned it. The young generation, they don't have their rights, so they feel by joining that group, maybe they can grab their rights. It is increasing everywhere in the area, not only in Africa and the Middle East. You find that type of group, Boko Haram, Daesh, and all those. It's growing, and it's attracting the young generation. Why? Because there are too many. Now, take Egypt, for instance, they're approaching half of the population. There are too many all over Africa. Poverty is there, unemployment, inflation, bad conditions of living. And so they find perhaps that if they fight their case this way, as long as they don't get it the peaceful way, by what they want, democracy, so they might get it by fighting for it. And again, that group of people, which is the young generation, normally they have nothing to lose. They don't have families, they don't have children, they don't have a wife, they don't have work. So while joining those, it's like a hope. Maybe they can win the case and have a proper life. And that's why they're growing all over, not only in Africa and not only Boko Haram, all over the world.
Dr. Basant, AU may be the official body acting in Africa. But why they are not solving or have an upper hand in what's going on in Africa? We only hear meetings, conferences, speeches, but nothing on the ground really happen. Why?
That's that's how politicians react. They have to find peaceful solutions, but when the problem is too complicated, it's very difficult to find a solution. It's not that simple. And again, there are also the powers, different powers who are fighting and who wants to keep the power. And it's not that simple. I mean, look at all problems in the region. Look at Syria, Iraq, look at Libya, Yemen. It's all powers who are, but unfortunately, they don't see and they don't understand the fact that there are many young generations surrounding them who cannot wait for that and cannot accept that type of standard of living. They want to work, they want to have a decent life, and the politicians take their time. I'm not saying it's wrong, but they should take their time. But on the other hand, they have to understand that a long time is creating too many problems. Meaning, look at the problem of Palestine, for instance. We've been talking about it for more than 50 years. The case is getting too complicated now to solve it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a game of power, and each one wants to have the power in their hands, and that's why you don't find anything on the ground, like many other cases in the region, in Africa specifically and Asia.
Dr. Basant, you mentioned the situation in Syria, Libya, Iraq, and in Yemen. What's happening to the Middle East? What's happening to Africa? Why the countries are falling each one after the other so easily, as if they were not countries?
In my personal opinion, the people responsible, or the politicians and the people in power in those countries, all of them, they insist of managing the countries in the 21st century like in the old good days. They can't admit the fact that the world has changed and that their people are seeing everything all over the world. Before, we didn't have that advanced technology. So most of the young generations and the populations couldn't see what is happening in the other part of the world. So they used to accept the fact that this is the way to live and there's no better way. Now everybody sees everything. And again, to prove that is the number of young generation who are trying to immigrate, illegally immigrate, and they risk losing their lives, and they lose it, but they want to go somewhere else to live a better life. You see? Mm. So the rulers in those countries cannot understand the fact either they have to change the way they're managing their countries, or they can never continue. You cannot manage people or manage your people by force. You cannot manage your people by killing them. It's impossible. So the conflict is complicated, but it is seen. The coming era is not for you because you cannot change. You cannot give your people what they need. So either you go or you give a way to change on the ground the way things are managed. This is, I think, the major problem, that they insist. Look at Syria, look at Iraq, Yemen, Saudi, Libya, Sudan. The world has changed.
When these countries will come back as real countries?
When the proper system is there, proper ruling system. A system which could really cooperate, comply to the new world order, as they used to say, and we didn't like that word, that clause. Yes, the world has changed. Has changed on the economic side, where we have to apply perfectly I call it the economic diplomacy. On the political side as well, nations are not like before. I mean, the world is open. The concept of this is my place and this is your place and nobody is to interfere and nobody to enter, this is not practical anymore, because you need to cooperate on the economic side. And once you do that, you have to unify most of the laws and regulations which can create an attractive environment to do business. So many rulers have been there for a very long time, You see what I mean? And they can't accept the fact that things are changing. They can't accept the fact that newcomers must enter. Young generation has to step in, and they have to take power as well. So they have to be trained and given the chance. So things are changing all over the world, or they changed. And in this particular part, the change is very difficult. And that's why it caused all those problems on the ground. I mean, you cannot kill your people to stay there. It's unacceptable.
Can you explain, now we have the refugees problem. They are drowning almost daily in the sea with numbers, huge numbers. They are risking their lives. They know they are, if they stay here, they're going to die. But at the same time, they're taking a risky trip to another place. So how's this?
The risky trip has a hope, but staying doesn't have a hope.
But they see that people are drowning every day.
They might not, you see. They have a hope. We might escape and go somewhere else and live decently. This proves that you are running out of your house, your home, to live somewhere else. Is this acceptable? And this point has to be really carefully addressed by the rulers and the governments. It's unacceptable.
Okay, now...
And you see your people every day, millions around the world. It's unacceptable.
Europe, the old continent, which has its own problems regarding economy, they're not interfering seriously in Syria or in Libya to stop the influx of refugees that they're going there to Europe. And at the same time, they're suffering from the number of refugees because it will hurt and damage their economy. So why is that?
Let me be frank. We always blame the others of our problems. I want to be very frank. We have problems, we know where they come from, we know the solutions, but we don't want to apply. And when we come to discuss, we always blame the others. Fine, maybe the others have interests, okay, but you are the responsible. And I want to give an example. Look at the Arab region. Which country is stable now? Which area is stable? That's not what you stable, the word stable. Which country doesn't have war on the ground? And why? And all those problems and wars are between countries in the same region. Same in Africa, same region. Why is that? Power. In my personal opinion, power. But if you tell me that a country like Libya, very rich like Libya, the economic situation turns to be that bad, look at Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, even Saudi Arabia and the Gulf area now are suffering from economic problems.
Yeah.
Why is all that? In my personal opinion, they can't admit that a change must take place on the ground. Not to blame other countries, I'm not defending Europe or the States, but I cannot blame others on problems on my own ground. You see what I mean? So I think, yes, they can help, but I do not think that they are the main decision makers. I think the governments and the people on the ground, for instance, let's take Syria as an example, they should solve it. And we will fall in another problem like the old Palestine. It could drag on, you see. Iraq.
And it will be divided maybe in the future.
Exactly. The Iraq must solve it. You see what I mean? Libya. But to blame the others, they might have. They might. But I cannot accuse without proof. But on the other hand, we should be being capable to sit together and solve the problem. It's unacceptable. It's a shame.
Well, Dr. Bassant Fahmy, member of parliament and an economic expert and political analyst, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Zina. Happy Ramadan.
You too. Thank you so much. Well, this brings us to the end of our Africa Today. I'm Dina Mamdouh. Thank you for watching.